4, 3, 2, 1.
You nearly miscounted then. There was a little hesitation there, wasn't it? Ladies and gentlemen, please, first of all, it gives me great honour to share a stage with a legend. There isn't a bigger person, I think, in the fishing world than this person sat next to me. So, can you just please put your hands together and give a nice warm welcome to the one and only Paul Young.
Thank you all. Very, very humbly received. Thanks very much.
Right. This is not a thing that Paul's just going to be up here and talk. This is participation from you lot, because he always supports the open weekend. He comes every year and he gets asked for pictures and all that. So this is your opportunity. If you have a question, we have some questions that he put in online, but if anybody here has a question for Paul, please put your hands up. We'll put you on the microphone and Paul is more than happy to answer any of your questions. So is there anybody that wants to ask him a question? Come on, think. I'm going to put you on the spot. First person. Is there one at the back? Right, come here you. I'm off. Right, who wants to ask him a question? Young lad, what's your name?
I'm Josh.
Right, Josh wants to ask, sorry, I'm going to pull you up here, because you're right in the back there. Josh wants a question.
What's your biggest fish?
My biggest fish is a skate, which weighed 194 pounds, and the man that helped me catch it is here today. His name is Davy Holt, and we caught it in between, near a place called Loch Allen, which is near the island of Mull, and it was in 200 feet of water, and it took me almost an hour to get it to the surface. We measured it, because there's a scale of measurements from wing to wing and nose to tail, and we measured it, and Davy Holt, the skipper, estimated that that fish would be about 194 pounds in weight, and that's the heaviest fish I've caught.
What, you have a question? Excuse us.
What's the best catch sea trout on? What's the best bait and lures and...
Not allowed to fish bait for sea trout. No, I've fished for sea trout down in South America. It's an interesting story. The Rio Grande down there is famous for its sea trout, and the Rio Gallegos. And they're not natural to there. They were brought from Europe by the estancia owner, so that he would be able to do a wee bit of fly fishing in the evening after his day's work. So over a number of years they brought sea trout from Europe, from Germany, from Loch Leven and various places like that, and they were put into the river, the Gallegos and the Rio Grande, and they took quite well. But of course, being trout, the feeding wasn't very good in the river, and as it happens in Scotland and in Wales, if the feeding's not good, they go to sea, and when they're at sea they feed up, but they've got to come back into fresh water to spawn, which they did. And it was years and years later, the Second World War came along. This happened in the late 1930s when these fish were taken out. Then the Second World War came along and nobody fished for about 10 years, until some Americans had come down to Patagonia and they saw these huge big silver fish jumping about in the water and decided to fish for them. They managed to catch one and they took scale readings of it, and these were sent away, and it was discovered that they were brown trout that had become basically into sea trout. They were brown trout that lived in the river, but the feeding was not very good. So they went to the South Atlantic, where of course the feeding was fantastic. But then when it was spawning time, they had to come back into the fresh water to spawn. And that's when they were caught, and it was discovered that they were sea-run brown trout. And it became a huge fishery, because the feeding was so good that these fish, when they came back in from the salt water to the fresh, you know, if you got a double-figure sea trout in Scotland or in Britain, that was a good one. But here you were catching fish 10, 15, 20, and even more pounds. And in fact, on the programme, one of the biggest fish that we got, it was a hen sea trout weighing 26.5 pounds, which is it's my heaviest sea trout. Well, it's not the heaviest sea trout, because I caught one which we didn't get on camera, weighing 32 pounds. But they're fantastic fish, and the great thing about it is it's all catch and release. Not a fish is killed, because it's a very It's a fishery that's a valuable fishery for the area, bringing in tourists and bringing people down into Patagonia. So that's my heaviest ever sea trout. 32.5 pounds, caught on a wee fly.
Now you've made everybody jealous.
Good.
Yeah. Right, I've got a question that came in from the internet. Alexander McChrystal. So if he's watching, thank you for that question. Right, Paul, I was going to ask this question as well. And I'm going to add something to this question. But when you were fishing for king salmon many, many years ago, remember the one where the rod disappeared? All right?
Everybody loves it when you make an arsehole of it.
Right, he asks, did you get the rod back, and was there a fish on the end of the line when the rod came back?
We never got it back.
You didn't?
No, we never got it back. I think Ricky said, oh, just say you've got it back. We never got it back. But the thing about that was that if you look at the video, the take is not all that strong. But, when I hooked the fish, what we're doing is we're fishing with a lead on the bottom and a paternoster with a little kind of thing like a quail's egg with a hook through it. And you're bouncing that along the bottom as the boat drifts downstream. So your lead hits the bottom and is that a fish? No, that's not a fish. Then suddenly you hit a fish, and when you hit one of these big sea trout, you're going downstream, they're going upstream, and they're 20 to 30 pounds in weight. So you know who's going to win that one. And when the rod went over the side, if you look at it, the great thing about it, I turned to the skipper. I said, I'm really sorry about that. And he went, no problem. Then he turned away and went, what an arsehole. Which is, I think
that was bleeped out of the
yeah,
video, wasn't it?
I think it was, but I think he was correct.
Right, John...
But the thing about it is it's an episode that everybody remembers.
Yes.
Because you make a cock up of it, they love it. And,
Yes.
and in fact, Ricky said to me, he said, do you want me to keep this in, or do you want, I can edit it out? And I said, no, keep it in, because that's what happened.
Yeah.
I said, I'm sure people will love it, and they do.
And I think
they remember
it's on a lot of blooper reels as well.
Yes.
Must do. Right, Mr. McGowan, John McGowan said, Paul, as an old-timer to another old-timer...
Where's your cheek?
No, that's not me, that's him.
No, I know, it's not the same.
Mind you, I'm feeling old. Right, he says, most salmon anglers must thought about wild salmon. What do you think is happening in the rivers? Salmon in Scotland, the state of fishing in Scotland now.
I think it's perilous. I think what's happening is we don't know what's happening at sea. And if the Russian trawlers are taking, tons and tons of mature salmon from the feeding grounds up near Greenland and Iceland and up in there, we can't control that. All we can do is control the rivers, and hopefully, some rivers won't allow salmon to be stripped and the rivers to be stocked. But I think that might be the future of it. The gravid fish that we get in the rivers. I know in Iceland, if you catch a salmon, it goes into a box beside the river, and they keep them there until they're ready to spawn. They strip the eggs and the milk, and they bring on the small salmon until it's time for them to go back into the river, and they restock the river.
They do it slightly different in Iceland. What they actually do, once they've a couple of inches, they stock them into pools at the side of the river.
Yeah, exactly. No.
But then what they do is, when they think they're big enough, they just open the gates. But the fish make up their own mind when they want to go, rather than just being thrown into the river.
Exactly. These ponds are earthen ponds, and as you say, they feed them in there, then they open up the sluices, let them go, but they only go when they're ready to go. When nature tells them to go. It's a very good system. I'm not sure that we could do it here in Scotland. Maybe Scott Mackenzie will be able to tell us about that, but nature needs a hand.
Yeah. Right, got another one. Dougie Morrison asks, if you'd only fish for one species, right, from now on, what's that species going to be, and where? And why?
Argentina, sea trout, because they're big. And they're fantastic. I mean, these sea trout, you're fishing quite a small fly, and the fly will come around and there'll be just a tiniest touch, just a tiny touch, and you lift your rod and the river explodes. This 22.5 pound sea trout will come out. Or at another time, you'll be fishing down with maybe a slightly a larger lure like that one on the table, and bang, and it will be a 2.5 pound sea trout. So you never know what you're going to get, and that is one of the great treats I think about fishing. You know, like sea fishing, and your bait goes down to the bottom. You don't know what you're going to get.
Right, we've got another one, bringing you closer to home.
Yep.
Where is the most, or the prettiest and nicest place you fished in this wonderful country of Scotland?
Well, prettiest and nicest are sort of probably Tweed or Tay, but best is up north. I'm a great fan of the river Helmsdale. I've been lucky enough to fish the Helmsdale, which is a wee highland river, very, very prolific. It's got 12 beats, 6 above the falls at Kildonan and 6 below the falls. And you've got 2 rods a day, and you can either fish above or below. So in your week, you can fish all 6 beats, either above or below. And there's not a pool on that river where you don't look and think, I could get a fish out of that. So that's it's not the prettiest because it's quite bleak up there. There are very few trees, but you know, some of the pools on the Tay, absolutely gorgeous, and on the Tweed as well, very pretty. And maybe that's the wonderful thing about Scotland, is the variety that you've got.
Yeah.
You know, from south up to the north.
Right, another question for you.
God.
Yeah, I know, a load of questions. Right, now then, is there one fly in all the years you've fished, is there one fly you would have confidence putting on the end of the line for any species anywhere in the world? It's not as easy as you thought then, isn't it?
No. Well, we actually tried it down in Argentina for brown trout on the Rio Gallegos. I fished a cast of Cape McLaren, a Peter Ross, and a Sol de Palma. And all of these flies work anywhere for trout. And for salmon, it would be a shrimp fly.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, in all its varieties, the shrimp flies are like on a wee double. I fished them on a wee golden double or a silver double. And when you see them in the water, the way they move in the water with the current, irresistible. And so that would be, for salmon, it would be a shrimp. And for trout, it would be a real good...
One now, not the 3, come on. I'm putting you right on the spot.
Cape McLaren.
Cape McLaren.
Black and brown. You know, it's a black hackle and brown hackle. Catch fish anywhere.
Right. That's you sold out to Cape McLaren's today, Mr. Devlin. You've got hundreds. Right, okay. Right, now then. What advice would you give a young Paul Young? Is there any advice in fishing, with all your years of experience and what you've done, what would you tell?
Get your ears fixed. I don't know. You have to get maybe like look at the fishing magazines. Take the guys who write in magazines like Scott there and people who know their rivers. You look at the magazines and glean a wee bit here and a wee bit there, and then of course the best thing to do is practical. Do it yourself. Learn how to do the knots. Learn how to tie your flies on properly with a turtle knot, not a half-blood knot. You know, and you learn all these things through trial and error. So I think Jamie Oliver's on television just now being asked by Kirsty Young if you could give your younger self some advice, what would it be? And he says, don't look back. And I think kind of the opposite. Do look back. Look back over the experience of all these anglers that have written in these fishing magazines and pick out the wee bits that appeal to you, apply them, and when they work, you can give them a mental tick. Try that next time again.
Right. So, you're known as an actor and a TV presenter. If you had to go back and say, right, I want to go down this path or that path, would it be the fishing or would it be the acting?
I wanted to be a marine biologist, but I got asked to do a kids program on television instead of going to university. It was a program called Roundup with Morag Hood and myself presenting it. We had the Beatles on it 3 times and various things like that. So I was quite used to presenting to a camera, and it's quite difficult because a camera lens is a lifeless thing. But what you have to think is that through that lens, Paul Devlin might be watching you, or Scott McKenzie might be watching you, or if God's help us, he might be watching you. So what you have to do is get a kind of image of who you're aiming your chat to. So I think in the long run, I enjoyed presenting to television, but also the thing of fishing and Ricky standing behind me with the camera saying, talk to me. So you have to turn away from what you would never do, because you're always watching your line. So you're talking to the camera here, and then you get a take, and you have to, it is difficult. But somehow we managed it, and over the years we caught some spectacular fish. And I think the combination of having been a presenter and then an angler on, I think the two of them kind of came together when we did the Hooked on Scotland's and Hooked on Fishing, and started going further abroad.
So how did it all start? The fishing, because you were presenting on telly, but what was the first thing? What was that eureka moment? Yes, we've got it. How did that start?
You mean the television?
Yes.
Or myself?
No, television.
I think when the first series of Hooked on Scotland went out,
But how did you get that, first of all?
Ricky,
So
the producer, Ricky, said, "This is what we do. We're going to go to Caithness. We'll do a programme in Caithness. We'll do one on the Tweed. We'll do one on the Tay, and we'll do one on this." And that's kind of what we did. And we went up to the Tay and spoke to Gillies. Dougie, what was his nickname? Can't remember. His language was ripe. But he was fantastic, and we caught fish, and Ricky took them away and edited them. He wrote, Mike Shepley wrote a commentary. I recorded it. Ricky edited it, put some music on it, and the first programme went to the BBC. We took six programmes on a Tuesday at 11 o'clock. No, that was the pilot. We took to a Tuesday at 11 o'clock, and he got a phone call at 11:30 saying, "That's brilliant, make 6." So we made 6 programmes. Ricky had asked the BBC, we're going to do this, that, and they said yes. And when the first of the big programmes went out, I was fishing for salmon in horizontal snow, saying, "This is fantastic." And the audience are going, "You're off your head." But they loved it because it was honest. And we caught fish, in places that people said, I could fish there. Or, I fished there, but I never caught. He's a lucky bugger, that kind of thing. So people identified with the places that we went to in that first series, and that gave us a kind of, we made 4 series for the BBC, and then went to STV, and then we went to Discovery Channel, and basically the format was very much the same. Here we are, I'm fishing with so-and-so, this is what we catch, and we start with a small one, you lose one, commercial break, get a nice one, get a big one, cheerio, end of programme.
Brilliant.
But I said to Ricky, what happens if I get the big one first? He said, "Don't worry, I'll do that." So he would do that in the editing. So it was very much an effort between Mike Shepley originally and Ricky on the camera. Imagine, he's got a black and white viewfinder that size, and he's trying to follow my fly line in the water. And I mean, his camera work was absolutely stunning, brilliant.
Of all the ones you've done all over the world, is there one memory that stands out more than anything? Be it a fish, or be it an area, or somewhere? Is there one in all those?
Again, I think it's got to be South America. When you're standing on the Rio Grande and you're looking down that river, and you think these fish have come up. Your next stop's Antarctica. So I used to smoke in those days. I would stop and have a cigarette, and I'd be thinking, here's me, a wee boy from Portobello, just outside Edinburgh, on the Rio Grande, having a Benson and Hedges goal tip, looking at Antarctica. and getting paid.
Didn't do bad, did you?
Not too bad.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, your last chance. Has anybody got any more questions? Yes.
Hi Paul,
Hi.
fascinating insight. Can I ask, who was it that inspired the young Paul to pick up a fishing rod?
It was my grandfather. My grandfather was Lord Rosebery's chauffeur, and he lived in an estate house called the Chapel Gate, or Domini Estate, which is just on the road to South Queensferry from Edinburgh. But he was a border man, he was a Gala man, he was for Gala Shields, and he used to fish the little rivers, the Leader Water, the Gala Water and things like that. And he would say, "Come on Paul, we'll gang down the Gala Water today." And we would get some brandling worms from the dung heap, a Stuart tackle, which is 2 hooks, a couple of lead shot, a wee bit of nylon on the end of the rod, and trot down the pools. Anything over 7 inches you could keep, but he wouldn't let you keep anything until it was 10 inches long to, as they say, let the wee ones survive. And that was what started me off. And then we started fishing, fly fishing, with tiny wee flies on the same rivers and catching these little trout. But then you realised that there was a world beyond that. Instead of the smaller rivers, you go to the Tweed itself, this big river, and catch. I remember I caught my first 1 pound trout on the River Tweed. Well, I'd never stopped talking about it for a month. And that was me hooked, as they say.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you please put your hands together? Paul, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a real privilege doing all these programs over the years. And what's fantastic is the young people are watching them nowadays on Catch Up, and it's a history program for them. The 1980s and 90s is a long time ago. So we captured what was right then, and I think it's great that they can still see them nowadays. Thanks a lot. Cheers.